For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On an unseasonably clear day in late May 2010, 32-year-old independent climber Ji-ho Park set out alone from Everest Base Camp for an acclimatization round in the notoriously dangerous western CWM icefall margin. He logged his route by radio, then fell silent. He never returned. Despite extensive air and ground searches, Ji-ho Park vanished without a trace into the vast, unforgiving altitudes of Mount Everest, swallowed by its silent, glacial expanse. For 13 agonizing years, his family and the global climbing community lived with profound and unanswered questions about his fate. Then, in the spring of 2023, a chilling discovery was made in a remote melt pool, a compact camera, frozen solid within a block of ice, hinting at a lost truth. This is the complete investigation into what truly happened to Ji-ho Park. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. Ji-ho Park, a 32-year-old independent climber, arrived at Mount Everest Base Camp in the spring of 2010, driven by a singular ambition to conquer the world's highest peak. Unlike many who joined large commercial expeditions, Park had meticulously planned a self-funded venture, relying on his own extensive experience and a small, dedicated support team at base camp. His detailed logs and rigorous equipment checks spoke to a serious and disciplined mountaineer, deeply respectful of the mountain's power. The allure of Everest, a formidable blend of breathtaking beauty and brutal danger, had drawn him, as it had drawn countless others before. The stage for his ascent was the western CWM, a vast, flat, glaciated valley nestled at the heart of the infamous Khumbu icefall. This region, known for its dynamic landscape of towering seracs and deep, hidden crevasses, demanded constant vigilance and careful navigation. It was here, at the margin of the icefall, that Ji-ho embarked on a solo acclimatization round. Such exercises are a critical, non-negotiable component of high-altitude climbing, allowing the body to adapt gradually to the thinning air and minimizing the severe risks of altitude sickness. On the morning of May 12th, Ji-ho's voice crackled over the radio, logging his departure for the routine exercise. His report was concise, professional, and entirely unremarkable, a standard check-in confirming his planned route and estimated return time. It was the last confirmed communication. As the hours passed, base camp manager Neera Thapa maintained a watchful eye on the radio. A seasoned professional, she understood the inherent risks of every movement on the mountain. The initial period of silence was not immediately alarming. Radio contact could be intermittent and unreliable in the vastness of the CWM. However, as the scheduled check-in times came and went without a response from Ji-ho, a subtle tension began to permeate the base camp operations tent. Subsequent attempts to raise him again yielded only static. The silence stretched, growing heavier and more ominous with each passing minute. The routine had dissolved into uncertainty, the expected becoming a chilling void. The realization slowly dawned. Ji-ho Park, who had logged his round with such precision, was no longer responding. The initial alarm had been sounded, signaling that something was profoundly wrong on the mountain. The immediate alarm at base camp galvanized a swift, if grim, response. Base camp manager Neera Thapa, her years of experience on Everest informing every decision, wasted no time. Emergency protocols were activated, and search teams composed of experienced Sherpas and volunteer climbers were rapidly mobilized. The last known coordinates from Ji-ho's radio log, though broad, provided a starting point within the treacherous expanse of the western CWM. Teams fanned out, their movements hampered by the thin air and the formidable, ever-changing landscape of ice and snow. However, the sheer scale of the terrain, combined with the extreme altitude and unpredictable weather patterns, rendered any search operation inherently perilous and incredibly difficult. The western CWM is a labyrinth of seracs, towering blocks of ice, and deep crevasses, many hidden beneath fresh snow. Visibility could shift from crystal clear to whiteout conditions in minutes, and the constant threat of avalanches or icefall collapses loomed. Oxygen depletion at such elevations dulled senses and slowed movements, turning a desperate search into an exhausting, high-stakes gamble against the mountain itself. Despite the urgent efforts, The teams found nothing. There were no tracks leading off the marked route, no discarded equipment, no distress signals, and no sign of Jiho Park or any indication of what might have befallen him. The mountain offered no clues, only an impenetrable silence. As days bled into a week, the grim reality began to set in. Each passing hour without a trace diminished the already slim prospects of survival. The risks to the search teams themselves escalated with prolonged exposure and repeated forays into dangerous zones. Hope, once a flickering ember, faded into a cold certainty. The agonizing decision was made to scale back the search efforts, a painful but necessary acknowledgement of the overwhelming odds. Eventually, with no viable leads and the dangers to rescue personnel becoming untenable, the operation was formally suspended. Jiho Park was officially logged as missing, presumed dead, another name added to the long, somber list of those claimed by Mount Everest. The suspension of the search left an agonizing void, a question mark hanging over the vast, indifferent landscape of Mount Everest. What precisely had happened to Jiho Park? The possibilities were as numerous as they were terrifying. A sudden, unseen fall into a crevasse swallowed by the ice without a sound, an unexpected avalanche or icefall collapse burying him instantly, a rapid onset of cerebral or pulmonary edema rendering him incapacitated before he could call for help, or simply extreme disorientation in a whiteout, leading him astray into an unrecoverable position. Without a body, without a single piece of equipment, without any trace, these remained chilling conjectures, forever out of reach, fueling a silent debate among those who remembered the incident. For Jiho Park's family and friends, the official designation of missing, presumed dead, offered a legal conclusion but no emotional solace. The absence of a definitive answer, the inability to mourn over remains, perpetuated a unique form of grief, one intertwined with perpetual uncertainty. It was a common tragedy on Everest, a place where the mountain frequently claimed its victims without ever relinquishing them. Jiho's story joined a grim fraternity of climbers who had vanished into the thin air, their fates absorbed by the mountain's immense, silent indifference. From George Mallory and Andrew Irvine in 1924 to more recent disappearances, Everest held countless such secrets. Jiho Park, in 2010, became another name on this somber roll call. As the years passed, the active investigation into his disappearance dwindled, then ceased entirely. The initial urgency of the search gave way to the quiet resignation of a cold case. 1 year turned into 5, then 10, and eventually 13. The memory of the incident, once a raw wound, slowly receded into the annals of Everest lore. For a time, Jiho Park's name would occasionally surface in discussions among veteran climbers or in articles recounting the mountain's perils, a stark reminder of its capacity to consume. But with no new evidence, no fresh leads, the case remained stubbornly closed, an unsolved puzzle frozen in time. The question of Jiho Park's final moments, once a pressing mystery, solidified into an enduring Everest legend, destined, it seemed, to remain unanswered forever, a testament to the mountain's ultimate power. 13 years after Jiho Park's disappearance, Mount Everest, a silent keeper of countless secrets, began to yield one of its own. The relentless march of climate change, gradually eroding the colossal glaciers and ice fields, was reshaping the very landscape of the high Himalayas. Melt pools, once ephemeral, were growing larger and more numerous, exposing terrain that had been locked away for centuries, even millennia. It was within one such newly formed melt pool, nestled precariously at the margin of the western CWM icefall, that a significant artifact was discovered in the late summer of 2023. A small trekking group, navigating the increasingly complex terrain, observed an unusual glint in the murky water of a melt pool. Upon closer inspection, partially encased in a block of ancient ice, lay a compact digital camera. Its casing was discolored by years of exposure and the harsh elements, but its form was unmistakable. The discovery was met with a mixture of initial skepticism. Everest is littered with lost gear, and a burgeoning sense of hope. Could this be more than just another discarded item? The location itself, precisely within the hazardous western CWM icefall margin, the very area where Jiho Park had last been active, immediately raised a profound question. Could this belong to the missing climber? The camera was carefully extracted, its icy cocoon preserved as much as possible, and transported back down the mountain. Preliminary examination confirmed it was a model consistent with technology available around 2010. Crucially, a faint personal engraving, partially obscured by mineral deposits and the remaining ice, was identified on its metallic casing. It was a unique marking, previously logged in Ji-ho Park's detailed equipment manifest from his 2010 expedition. The undeniable link was established. This was Ji-ho Park's camera, an artifact frozen in time, recovered from the very heart of his last known location. The potential was immense and immediately understood. This fragile device, against all odds, might hold the key to unlocking the long-standing mystery of Ji-ho Park's disappearance, offering a chilling, unprecedented glimpse into his final moments. The camera, still partially encased in its glacial shroud, was treated with the utmost care from the moment of its discovery. Recognizing its profound significance, the trekking group immediately alerted authorities, and a specialized team was dispatched to oversee its delicate retrieval and transportation. Wrapped in insulated containers designed to maintain its frozen state, the camera was meticulously brought down the mountain, then flown to Kathmandu and finally to a state-of-the-art forensic lab in Europe. The goal was to prevent any further degradation that might compromise the integrity of its internal components, or more critically, its memory card. At the lab, the responsibility for unlocking the camera's secrets fell to Will Chen, a renowned photo restorer and digital forensics expert. Chen's work typically involved salvaging data from devices damaged by fire, flood, or impact, but this presented a unique challenge. A device frozen solid for 13 years, then recovered from a melt pool. His task was not merely to repair a camera, but to resurrect a digital ghost, to retrieve information from a device that had endured the most extreme conditions imaginable. The technical hurdles were formidable. The camera's outer casing showed clear signs of corrosion and impact damage. Inside, the delicate electronics were likely compromised by water infiltration, followed by prolonged freezing, which could have caused components to expand and contract, leading to microfractures. The memory card itself, though designed to be robust, faced the risk of data corruption from sustained moisture and temperature fluctuations. Chen and his team embarked on a painstaking multi-stage process. The camera was slowly thawed in a controlled environment, allowing the ice to melt gradually without causing further shock. Each component was then meticulously cleaned of mineral deposits and carefully dried using desiccant chambers. Every step was a delicate balance, a race against potential further degradation, with the immense pressure of unlocking a 13-year-old mystery resting on their precision. The anticipation within the lab was palpable. Weeks turned into a month of meticulous work. Finally, after countless hours of careful disassembly and reassembly of specialized interfaces, the moment arrived. With bated breath, Will Chen connected the recovered memory card to a forensic data reader. The system whirred, and then a small green light flickered, indicating successful detection. The memory card, against all odds, was readable. This was the breakthrough, the critical juncture that offered the first real hope of understanding Ji-ho Park's final moments, promising to transform a cold case into a chilling revelation. The successful extraction of the memory card was merely the first hurdle cleared. The true test lay in the data it contained. As Will Chen initiated the transfer, a cascade of files populated the forensic workstation. Among them were hundreds of still photographs, mostly scenic shots of Everest's grandeur, and candid self-portraits of Ji-ho Park, testament to his journey. But then, a series of video files emerged, dated May 12, 2010, the day of his disappearance. The first clips were unremarkable, showing Park navigating the icefall margin, his breathing heavy but controlled. Then, the footage shifted dramatically. The camera, likely clipped to his harness or backpack, captured a sudden, violent upheaval. The perspective lurched, and a massive section of ice and snow, a cornice, fractured and began to slide. The sound was deafening, a roar of collapsing ice and grinding rock. The camera tumbled, recording a chaotic blur of white and gray before settling momentarily on a distorted view of the sky, now rapidly darkening. The timestamp indicated late afternoon, precisely as dusk began to settle over the western CWM. The subsequent footage was disorienting, a shaky, ground-level view, punctuated by faint groans and labored breathing, suggesting injury and extreme distress. The light faded further, plunging the scene into near-total darkness, illuminated only by the faint glow of a headlamp, sweeping erratically. To contextualize this chilling visual evidence, meteorologist Anya Volkov was consulted. Analyzing historical weather data for May 12, 2010, Volkov confirmed a period of localized instability in the late afternoon, consistent with a cornice collapse. Her models corroborated the rapid onset of dusk, a crucial detail explaining the sudden lack of visibility in the footage. More critically, the camera's internal GPS data, partially corrupted but recoverable, was cross-referenced with historical satellite imagery and the abandoned waypoint pings from Jiho Park's personal locator beacon, which had ceased transmitting shortly after his last radio check-in. The combined data points formed a precise, horrifying timeline. The coordinates from the camera's last active recording synced perfectly with the final unanswered pings from Park's beacon, placing him at the exact location of a known, unstable cornice feature on the western CWM icefall margin. The footage unequivocally showed Jiho Park caught in a sudden, catastrophic cornice collapse. The subsequent disorientation, captured by the camera's erratic movements and the audible struggle, indicated he had survived the initial fall but was left injured and lost as night descended, likely succumbing to exposure or further injury in the ensuing hours. The memory card provided the definitive answer, closing the long-disputed route mystery. Jiho Park had not simply vanished. He had been swallowed by the mountain in a sudden, brutal event, his final moments etched onto a fragile digital chip, waiting 13 years to be found. The mountain had finally spoken. After 13 years of agonizing silence, the recovered camera of Jiho Park provided an irrefutable, chilling account of his final moments. The footage, meticulously cross-referenced with historical meteorological data and the last faint waypoint pings from his personal locator, left no room for speculation. Jiho Park had not simply disappeared into the vast, indifferent expanse of Everest. He had been a victim of a sudden, catastrophic cornice collapse on the precarious western CWM icefall margin. The initial violent fall, the subsequent disorientation captured by his camera's erratic movements, and the inevitable succumbing to the extreme elements in the rapidly fading light painted a definitive, tragic picture, bringing an end to one of Everest's enduring mysteries. For those who had followed the case with a lingering sense of unease, for the global climbing community that often grappled with such unknowns, and most profoundly, for any family and friends who had endured 13 years of agonizing uncertainty, the discovery brought a profound, albeit painful, sense of closure. The official designation of missing, presumed dead, was now replaced with a factual, detailed narrative, allowing for a final understanding and a proper remembrance. Jiho Park's story, once a stark, cautionary tale of the mountain's inscrutable dangers, transformed into a poignant testament to its unforgiving power, made all the more vivid and immediate by his own captured evidence. His camera, a small, resilient device that had defied unimaginable conditions, became his ultimate voice, a silent witness delivering its truth across more than a decade. This resolution underscored the brutal, indifferent nature of Mount Everest. It is a place where human ambition, courage, and meticulous preparation often meet the raw, untamed forces of nature, frequently with fatal consequences. Climbers, driven by the allure of its summit, knowingly accept these profound risks, but the mountain rarely gives up its secrets easily, often absorbing its victims without a trace. Yet, in Jiho Park's case, the twin forces of time and technology conspired to reveal a hidden truth. The slow, inexorable melt of the colossal glaciers, a stark and undeniable reminder of global environmental changes, eventually unearthed an artifact that modern forensic science then painstakingly brought back to life. It was a remarkable confluence of natural processes and human ingenuity that ultimately solved a puzzle that had seemed destined to remain forever unsolved. Jiho Park's final journey, frozen in time on a fragile memory card, served as a powerful, enduring reminder. The mountain, in its own slow, relentless way, always reveals its truth.